All right, we are live. How's it going, everybody? Chuck Holton here, coming to you from West Virginia. And actually, I'm going to change to a different camera. That camera is not going to do as well. No, I'll leave it there. Okay. Coming to you from West Virginia today. Thank you for watching. Please post in the chat where you're watching from. I bet it's cold where you are. It's getting a lot colder here, minute by minute. It's supposed to get down to 20 degrees by the end of the day today. It started the day at 54 degrees or something. So it's a pretty big swing for us. Folks, a 42-minute video just got about 100 million views in like 48 hours by Nick Shirley as he uncovered and exposed a bunch of fraudulent daycare centers in Minneapolis that are all run by one people group, a group of migrants from Somalia. But it turns out that is just the tip of the iceberg. And we're going to break all that down for you today. It is absolutely mind-boggling, the scale and scope of fraud and waste and abuse that's happening across this country in welfare programs and other government and NGO programs that are all over the country. But before we get to that, let's talk about silver for a minute. I don't know if you noticed, but silver hit $88 an ounce. It just keeps shooting up. And a lot of people are wondering why. I just wanted to take a minute and sort of educate you a little bit on what's causing that. The United States listed silver as a critical mineral back in November. And in October, China passed the regulation restricting exports so people cannot export silver out of China anymore. In December, 63 million ounces of silver were delivered out of COMEX's registered 113 million ounces is what they have, and 63 million ounces of those went away in 1 month. That's 60% of the physical supply of silver, and that leaves about 50 million ounces available for delivery in the month of January. But the demand, there is basically being a run on silver now because the United States is trying to suck it up. China's trying to suck it up. Other governments want it. Of course, about 60% of all silver is used in industrial capacities. So that's your iPhone, your things like that. And so the demand is through the roof and the supply is drying up. And so silver keeps going. Now, why do you need to know about that? Well, I've talked about for people that are nearing retirement age or in retirement age, you don't want to have all of your retirement accounts in something that's really volatile, stocks and bonds and things like that. It's a good idea to diversify that and put some of it into precious metals for some people. Now, how do you know if you're one of those people? Well, here's what you do. You call Preserve Gold, our friends and sponsors here. Preserve Gold will help you ascertain whether or not you are right for gold or silver. I'm not the one to do that. I don't know each of you in your situations, but Preserve Gold will talk you through it and help you decide whether or not you should have some gold or silver in your portfolio. All you have to do is text the word Chuck to 50505, and you can get gold or silver or platinum or palladium or whatever you want in your retirement account or physically delivered to your home. And I think that my personal opinion is I think silver still has quite a ways to go because, again, the supply is drying up in many respects. So thank you to Preserve Gold for sponsoring us and being such a faithful sponsor throughout the year. It means a lot to us. So again, you can get that free wealth protection guide by going to preservegold.com/hotzone or just texting Chuck to 50505. Okay, now let's go back to this video from Nick Shirley. This is ridiculous. I'm just going to show you the first minute or so of the 42-minute documentary he put out about this. Take a look.
Ask where the money's going. What do you guys think about the fraud that's taking place here in Minnesota?
I don't think anybody is enabling fraud to happen.
Hold Governor Walz accountable for this.
What was this money spent on?
1.26 million. What was that money spent on? There aren't any kids.
Answer the question. Are there children? There's no children inside this building. Potentially the largest fraud scandal in U.S. history is taking place in Minnesota, as literally billions of dollars have been funneled through Somali-ran fraudulent businesses. So much fraud, it could actually almost replace the entire GDP of Somalia.
So I just wanted to show you. I mean, I encourage you to go watch the whole thing. It is mind-blowing. The crazy thing is, this is something that's been known about for a long time. I went to Minneapolis myself and reported on this topic and how it plugged into the nexus between funding Al-Shabaab over in Somalia, recruiting fighters from the Somali community in Minnesota and sending them over to Somalia to get combat experience. I made a documentary about it in 2018, and nobody was listening. It just didn't, like nobody cared. This has been going on for a long time. As a matter of fact, there's another 2018 story. I'll play just a news feature from Fox News. Take a look at this one.
About the daycare.
To better understand the connection between daycare fraud and the surge in carry-on cash, you have to look at the history of this crime.
5 years ago, the Fox 9 investigators were first to report that daycare fraud was on the rise here in Minnesota. We exposed how some businesses were gaming the system to steal millions in government subsidies meant to help low-income families with their childcare expenses.
In order for the scheme to work, the daycare centers need to sign up low-income families that qualify for childcare assistance funding. These surveillance videos are from a case prosecuted by Hennepin County. They show parents checking their kids into a center only to leave with them a few minutes later. Sometimes no children would show up, but either way, the center would bill the state for a full day of childcare. This video from that same case shows a man handing out envelopes of what are believed to be kickback payments to parents who are in on the fraud. This is video of Fozia Ali being sworn in as a member of the City of Hopkins Park Board. As she was taking her oath of office, she was also under investigation for wire fraud and theft of public money. State and federal agents had already raided Ali's daycare center in South Minneapolis. The business was suspected of billing the government for over $1 million worth of bogus childcare service. She'd taken a 2-month trip from Minnesota to Dubai and then Kenya, staying at times in $800 a night hotel rooms. She used an app on her phone to bill the state of Minnesota for childcare services while she was out of the country. Has received several $1 million in childcare assistance funds. According to public records and government sources, most are owned by Somali immigrants. Open secret that starting a daycare center is a license to make money. The fraud is so widespread, they say, that people buy shares of daycare businesses to get a cut of the huge public subsidies that are pouring in.
My personal feeling is we need a nationwide task force to clamp down on this kind of fraud.
Okay, so that's from 2018, the same year I went to Minneapolis and reported on that. And nothing's been done about it. It's just gotten worse and worse and worse. But now that Nick Shirley put out this video, I'll just play some of it here.
Have worked hand in hand with the Minnesota government as they enabled billions of...
Turn the audio off on it. Now that he's really exposed this again and has gotten a lot of play on social media, it's blowing up social media. And the news is still playing catch up. The mainstream media is only now starting to get around to reporting on this particular issue. So this kid is, I've seen him all around. He actually came to Panama during the riots that were taking place when President Trump said he was going to take back the Panama Canal. And he's fearless. I think he's Mormon, is just a young kid that just goes around and just asks all these questions. This guy in the video with him is in many of these videos. And so he's the one who really has done a lion's share of the investigations on this. And now he's just bringing it to light. And Nick Shirley got hooked up with him. I believe I actually interviewed this guy in 2018. Here's another video of him talking about another fraud scheme that he's uncovered in Minnesota. Take a listen.
See all these transportation companies going around, and it was always a Somali driver. And I said, well, that's great. They're out there transportation contributing, but they never had a passenger, never, ever once. And I said, well, what is all this transportation? What are they doing? So then I found out that in Minnesota, they have something called non-emergency medical transportation. So this is going to the dentist's office, therapy, whatever it might be. And I said, well, how many of these companies are there? And the research came back that there are 1,020 of them, and more than 800 of them are Somali owned. Nobody from the state of Minnesota ever cross-checks to see if any rides were ever actually provided. All they did was write the check.
So obviously the fraud is, again, we're just touching the tip of the iceberg here. It's insane what is coming out, and it's spreading to other states. So there's one in, not Nick Shirley, Nate Friedman uncovered a fraudulent scheme in Massachusetts that also has to do with immigrants.
Oh, wow. Oh, this is a nice facility.
I am doing a story on Holiday Inns in the area, and I just wanted to ask a few questions.
And I'm gonna have to ask that you either stop recording or leave.
Oh, it's by Elliott Human Services.
Yeah.
This company I know, they charge $42 per meal from the taxpayer. What do you do for work here?
It's private property, you're trespassing.
Okay. Will you keep saying that?
You're trespassing. As soon as they say you're trespassing, you have to leave or you're arrested.
My name is John Featherston. I'm a former migrant shelter director in Massachusetts. I helped out in a couple different sites. Everything is free. I cannot stress the word everything is free. Everybody has a nice car. Most of them have nice cars. But when they have a doctor's appointment in Boston, or they have a immigration hearing in New Hampshire, which is an hour and a half away, you think they use their own car? Nope. They say, "Oh, I need an Uber. I need a Lyft."
How much is given for rides for Uber and Lyft?
The amount of money that we would spend on Ubers and Lyft was well in excess of $100,000 a month.
A month?
A month, yeah. As good as...
So $100,000 a month for Uber rides for people who already have their own cars. And again, are being, as he's pointing out, and this is something that I've been saying for a long time, when you come here as a migrant, you get treated much better than if you were here as a citizen. It's a matter of fact, my own tax attorney told me at one point that if I were to renounce my citizenship in the United States, which I'm not going to do, but if you did, so as it is, because I work overseas, I get some tax, some kind of give back, because if I have to pay taxes in the country that I'm living in, like Panama, I wouldn't, you could get into a situation where you would have to pay more than 100% of your income if you had to pay taxes in two separate countries. So the United States has something called the foreign earned income exclusion that allows me to not pay taxes on the first certain amount of money in that I make every year, so that if I have to pay taxes in the country where I have a home, then I won't get double tax. Well, so my tax guy said, if I was, because of that, in order to get that tax benefit, I can only be in the United States for pleasure for 35 days a year. If I'm here 36 days, I lose that tax benefit. It would probably cost me $70,000 in lost tax benefit, right? So I have to be real careful about, if I'm in the United States, make sure it's for work, make sure I can document that it's for work, and make sure that I have, like, I don't actually own anything in my name in the United States, and everything that's in my name is owned in Panama, so I can show that that's my bona fide abode for taxes. It's not tax evasion, it's just tax planning there. It's completely legal what I'm doing. But my tax guy said if I were to renounce my citizenship, I would pay zero taxes in the United States, and I would get to come to the U.S. for about 6 months a year without having to pay any taxes. So that's just one example of how non-citizens get treated better in the United States than citizens do. And this tax problem, the fraud problem, just keeps getting worse and worse and worse. I've told you many times on this show about the Cuban couple that I met. They were walking through the Darien Gap in Panama when I met them, but I kept in touch with them. They made it to the United States. I wanted to know, how they made it up through Central America, and then I've just kept in touch with them over the years, just to kind of track how they're doing. Within 60 days of getting to the United States, they were signed up for federal and state programs in multiple states So they learn how to do this from other migrants that have kind of gamed the system ahead of them, and they have these WhatsApp chat groups that they can give each other their secrets in. And so they went to a program and signed up for a program in Texas. They knew better than to go in as a married couple, so they went in as two single people, and they got twice as much money. Then they left and went to Florida while they were still collecting that money from Texas, and signed up for a similar program in Florida. So, and then they signed up for SNAP benefits, TAMP benefits, et cetera, et cetera. And this couple that was making about $45 a month jointly when they lived in Cuba, within 60 days of arriving in the United States, was making about $6,000 a month. And more than half of it was from federal, state, and local programs that they had signed up for, that they were just getting free money. Now, if that doesn't set your hair on fire, I don't know what would. If you're an American citizen and you are getting ready to do your taxes this year, and you see the enormous amount of taxes that you're having to pay the federal government, and then you see how this stuff is being wasted, and it's being wasted all over the country, like everywhere. There was I think I have it here. Let's see if I can find it. There's wrong folder. Here we go. The fraud in, no, we don't get to that yet. No, not that. The fraud is so pervasive that they're finding stuff like this. This is in the Los Angeles Times. 1.2 million fake students applied for California community colleges last year. Why? Because they can get a stipend or a payment to go to community college. And so rather than just signing myself up and not going to class, people have made a business out of signing up hundreds or thousands of people that don't exist. And that's their full-time job. They create these identities because they realize nobody checks any of these things. They create these false identities. They submit them on an online form through the state of California for reimbursement to go to community college, and then they just collect the money and just keep it. This is one more. I mean, it goes on and on and on. And that's not even the worst of it. Now what they're finding is that a lot of these fraudulent schemes are turning into kickbacks for the Democratic Party. I'm going to show you several things here where this, for example, was a woman who was running for mayor in Washington State. No, wrong one. Sorry. Where? Here it is. Okay. Here she is.
I'm Ubah Kadere. I'm a single black immigrant mother and homeowner in the unincorporated area of Renton, and I'm running for King County Council in District 9. I came to King County.
So this wasn't the mayor, this was somebody else, but there's a lot of Somalis running for office in Washington State. The list that's next to her head are lists of campaign donations to her from out-of-state daycare centers in Minnesota. And so you can see there, actually, here's a close-up. Let me get rid of her for a second, and we'll put this close-up in there. These are adult daycare centers giving donations to candidates inside in the state of Washington. The daycare centers, though, are in Minneapolis. Why would a daycare center in Minnesota be giving money to a candidate in Washington State? Well, because they're both Somali. And there's so many of these that are coming out. I can show you a couple of them, but it's mind-boggling. I mean, you couldn't. It would take you days to go through all of these. Here's another one. I went and looked up this daycare center in Minneapolis, and surprising that there are a ton of daycare centers that have very similar names to this. And then you go look at who owns them, and it blow your mind. But look at the other campaign contributions that this is for the mayor of SeaTac, Washington. Mohammed Abdulrahman Wassam. I mean, basically every one of these names, there's no John Smiths in there. Every one of these names are Somali names. So the Somalis are taking government money that is given to help autistic kids or help low-income families get food or housing, to help with home health services. That's a whole nother area of fraud we haven't got to yet. And transportation services, all sorts of daycare, whatever. They're getting federal funds, that's your taxpayer dollars, sent to them for these supposed businesses. They don't do those businesses. They take that money, and then a portion of it they use to try to get more people like them elected, get some more immigrants elected around the country. And of course, this woman in Washington State, she has to hit all the hot buttons. I'm a single immigrant, Black mother, and I'm, living my lived experience. She's all the liberal buzzwords.
Ubah Kadere came to King County 25 years ago as a 15-year-old refugee. My values are shaped by my lived experiences, my policy chops, and my organizing background. For decades, we have seen our Black, Indigenous, people of color communities and working class communities facing systemic and structural racism. These problems peaked last year with COVID and a renewed record.
Okay, so she's just going on and on. She's hitting every one of these hot buttons issues because she's in a very liberal area, an extremely liberal area. So she's trying to get herself elected there. The interesting thing is you can't just say that, oh, these Somalis are all a bunch of liberals. No, they're liberal when it's profitable to be liberal, and they're Republican or conservative when it's profitable to be conservative. There's I'm not even sure what to call this person. Somebody running for a delegate in, I think, South Carolina or North Carolina, something like that. And their photograph has them wearing a full Saudi burqa. You can't even see their eyes, nothing, just wearing a full burqa. So it's just this woman who covered herself in a bunch of black drapes running as a Republican. But when people started doing some research into it, she's been donating and supporting Democratic causes, not Republican causes, but she's running as a Republican to try to throw a wrench into the primaries down there. So just like I said, the scale and scope of this keeps growing, keeps getting more and more egregious. There's another story here, I think.
About the daycare.
To better understand.
No, we talked about that one. Talked about the transport fraud. Let's see if here's one. Oh, this one is part of the response. Okay. So the U.S. Small Business Administration has sent a letter to the state of Minnesota. And I want to, let's see if I can, whoops. Hold on. I'm trying to do all this myself here. And this is a letter to Governor Walz from the head of the Small Business Administration, Kelly Loeffler. And she says, I'll just read you a portion of this. As administrator of the U.S. Small Business Administration, I'm notifying you that effective immediately and until further notice, the SBA is halting the disbursement of federal funds to SBA resource partners operating in the state of Minnesota, totaling $5.5 million in annual support. This action is a result of fundamental breakdown of the public trust. Under your leadership, Minnesota failed to safeguard taxpayer dollars, and SBA will not continue to place federal resources at risk in a state where oversight measures are ignored and accountability is abandoned. So this goes on and on, but this is not talking about the programs that I've been discussing so far, heretofore. The programs I've been talking about are not funded through the SBA necessarily, but what is funded through the SBA, which all of these daycare centers and stuff we're signing up for, were Paycheck Protection Program loans during the pandemic, and EIDL loans that were turned into grants. So these people, like if you saw that the place that Nick Shirley went to, it was the International Learning Center, the learning, it was supposed to be the learning center, but they misspelled learning on the sign outside the center. And it was supposed to have 99 kids attending that thing, and there were no kids there. It was blacked out windows, locked doors, and a misspelled sign up above it. That some other people gone back and looked into the history of that place and found out that they took, I think, almost $300,000 in Paycheck Protection Program grants and EIDL loans that were turned into grants, and never paid them back. That's on top of the like $4 million a year they were getting for the children that they were supposedly taking care of that never showed up at this place. And if this was one or two, if this was obviously you're going to expect anytime there's a government program with very little oversight, there's going to be some fraud involved. But you like to think that people are basically honest. Well, yeah, no, this was so systemic. It was so pervasive that there are something like 42,000 NGOs that are getting government money just in the state of Minnesota. Minnesota alone, 42,000 NGOs. And the last time I talked about this on the live last week, we talked about the fact that the FBI came out and said that they believe more than 50% of the $18 billion that had been sent to these programs was fraudulent in Minnesota. It's not just in Minnesota, though. It's almost every state in the union. There's another one that I found, a little bit different take, and this is not from Somalis. Interesting thing is, people are going to their states' websites and looking up daycare centers in their states, like Idaho, for example. And in Idaho, you wouldn't expect, Idaho doesn't have a lot of migrants. That's one of the places where migrants, don't go. But in Idaho, here's a list of, let's get rid of that. Nate, can you get rid of that? Okay, there we go. Let's try this again. Here's a list of daycare centers in Idaho. And just notice who owns them. Ahado Musa Haji, Mohammed Al-Rashid, Alan Tulinaro, Aline Nzinga, unknown, Musila Teta, Rahab Nadime. A lot of these are Somali names or African names. And this is, again, in a place like Idaho, of all places. Well, so it's not just Somalis. in this case, the fraudsters were from Eastern Europe. Take a look.
Estimated $14 million worth of fraud was committed by these three suspects. Christians Petrovskis, Romuns Tisobrits, Normuns Olavikas were arrested for shoplifting and cloning gift cards in Texas.
These people were all here illegally, and they were all here specifically to commit crimes.
The men are foreign nationals from Latvia, a country in Europe. The group told investigators that they typically steal gift cards from 10 stores a day, 7 days a week, and have been actively doing so since May.
So that's another fraud scheme committed by illegal immigrants who come into the United States specifically to steal money. And folks, what that does is that increases the prices of everything. I saw a report this morning that said that they did a study and found that illegal immigrants commit crimes at rates 3 to 4 times as high as citizens in the United States do. And the amount of illegal immigrants that are now in U.S. prisons is costing literally billions of dollars a year to the American taxpayer. The price of housing is going up because is so high because there are so many people illegally in the United States competing for a limited pool of houses. The price of gas, of food, of insurance, your medical care. One of the reasons why the cost is so high for your medical care is because illegal immigrants can go to the hospital and get treated for free. They're not supposed to, but the thing is, my sister works in an emergency room in Maryland, and she says, we can't turn people away. So these people come in, they don't speak English, and they get the emergency room. And some people come into the emergency room every day to get treated for something. So homeless people and things like that, just to go someplace warm. So all of this fraud costs you money. The thing is, it's not like nobody knew about it. I mentioned that at the beginning. Folks, this has been a known issue for many years, and it just keeps getting worse because the government has not done anything about it. Tim Walz has allowed this to happen in Minnesota. President Biden allowed this to happen nationwide and he was committing resources to tracking down Catholic families for being pro-family, to, spying on journalists and things like that. Instead, now Kash Patel is reallocating FBI resources to send them to places like Minnesota to start investigating. But the scale of the fraud is so great, we need 100,000 FBI agents up there to go to really shut it down. They've already convicted almost 100 people of fraud just in the Feeding Our Children scandal, where they were taking money from the government to feed people, and then they were feeding ghost children, right? So they've already convicted like 99 people, and almost 80 of them are Somalis in that scheme. But that's just one scheme. There's so many more, and the deeper we look, the more we find. And folks, I would not be surprised. We know that entitlement programs like welfare are the number one largest budget item in the U.S. budget. And they have to collect trillions of dollars in taxes every year in order to fund all these programs. It would not surprise me one bit if you could somehow know the total extent of the fraud that we're looking at in the United States, just in those government programs. It would not surprise me one bit if it was over $1 trillion. And folks, we all pay for that. We all pay for that. But this is not just in the United States either. There's been a bunch of reports recently about very similar fraud perpetrated by Somali immigrants in Sweden. Hundreds of millions of dollars worth of money being stolen exactly the same way from welfare programs in Sweden. Much of it then ends up making its way to Al-Shabaab and to Somalia. They brag about the fact that they send so much money back to Somalia. I've got a video here. Let me see if I can find it. Here it is, where this woman is. Let's see if I can find where that just went. No, that's not it. Oh, I see what happened.
Estimated 14.
No, not that one either. Sorry, folks. It didn't add it because there we go. Okay. So the reporter is saying, she talks to me about her family. Her family's brothers, sisters, cousins, mother, and uncles are back home in Somalia. What makes Somali special is that we support not only our own families, we even send money to our neighbors in Somalia. So she's proud of that. This doesn't just happen in Somalia, though. Several of the reports that I've seen today show a very heavy weighting in the people running these organizations that are taking federal funds. There's a very heavy weighting towards African countries and Haiti, which might as well be an African country because it's populated by people that came from Africa. So, yeah, again, the common denominator is not the color of their skin. The common denominator is the fact that they come from what are essentially failed states, the states where there is not a strong rule of law. So these people learn, they grow up learning how to exist in a place where you can't count on the courts to do the right thing. You can't count on the police to do the right thing. You just have to count on your own wits. And so it's a matter of stealing from everybody else before they steal from you. It's get what you can, every man for himself. And then they come to a country that's founded on the golden rule: do unto others as you would have them do unto you. And it's very, very easy to take advantage of Americans because we're spectacularly generous people. So it's not only the relationship scams and romance scams and all those sorts of things that are happening. I think you're getting the sense, as I am, everybody, including the government, is out to take your money from you. And you just cannot be careful enough these days with where that goes. But the biggest line item in everybody's, almost anybody who makes more than, $60,000, $70,000 a year, the biggest line item in your budget is taxes. You might not know that, you might not realize that, but that's because the taxes are hidden in very creative ways and they're spread out throughout your, what you have to spend every day. But it is the largest, if you're in a higher tax bracket, you could easily pay 60, 70% of your income in taxes in the United States. Federal, state, local, property tax, sales tax, gas tax, cell phone tax, travel tax, road tolls, everything. There's all just taxes. And so if that's the largest line item in your budget, then that's the thing that we should go after if we want to, have more money left in our pocket at the end of the month. This is the thing that drives me crazy. There's so many people, and a lot of people that watch this show, who are just vehemently against giving any money to anything outside the United States, no matter how good for national security, good for American economic progress, just, good for humanity in general. No matter how good it is, we don't want to give a dime to anything outside the United States. We ought to be giving money to our own poor people. And yet we have literally trillions of dollars of programs that are meant to go to poor people, and they're being stolen by criminals and sent to fund terrorism around the world. We ought to be far more upset about that than we are about sending weapons to Ukraine. That far more. This should have you banging on the doors of your local representative's office and screaming at him to do something about this. I mean, it's just mind-boggling how people just have no sense of scale. The amount of money that we're giving to Ukraine is chump change compared to what is being stolen from us every year from our own programs that are designed to help poor people in America. This is why I say that charity is first and foremost individual. Charity should be something that we personally give to people in need, and we should never trust the government to do our charity for us. It's an absolute cop-out if you say, well, I don't give money to charity, I just pay my taxes, and then the government, takes care of the poor people. That's an absolute cop-out, and we can see here how effective it is. Okay. All right. Let's get over to our questions and comments. Thank you, Cheryl, for the $2. Appreciate that. Next question. I have a $100 silver coin. What's it actually worth right now? A $1 silver coin. If you're talking about a silver dollar, like an older one that was actually 90% silver or whatever, those things are probably worth, if I had to guess, like $40 to $50, depending on the condition it's in. But junk silver is a kind of a different thing. If you have a silver, I don't have one right here with me, but if you have a silver 1 ounce silver coin, that's worth about $80 right now, or a little bit more even. Okay, next question. How is a place of business that provides services to a community a private property? Yeah, well, it is. The building is owned by a private person, and so they call that private property. But I get what you're saying. If they're receiving federal funds, that should not be private property. But these guys are renting office space, and they call it private property. And the police back them up on that. Nick Shirley got kicked out if you watch that 42-minute video, he got kicked out of places by the police who came, and he's like, well, I'm just a journalist trying to do some journalism here. And they're like, no, I'm sorry, you can't be here. You have to leave. And they escorted him out of the building. So that's unfortunate. Next question. Have you heard anything about Chase Bank buying up all the silver, driving the value of silver up? Family member told me this. I don't think it's Chase Bank. I think it's all the banks. But more importantly, it's the Federal Reserve, the U.S. federal government is stocking up on silver. As I mentioned, they designated it as a critical mineral, and that was back in November. So that is going to put more demand on silver. And so it's not too late to get into silver, I believe. It's my personal opinion. Next question. I'm originally from Minnesota and would love to see Walz and Keith Ellison go to prison for ruining Minnesota. Do you think there's a good case against these evil people? I don't think it's likely they will go to prison. I'm with you, though. I would love to see that happen. Ellison is a spectacularly gross human being, and and Tim Walz is just a bumbling fool. Either way, somebody needs to go to prison. A whole lot of somebodies need to go to prison over this. And you can imagine that the Somali community is in full-blown panic mode right now across Minnesota and the rest of the country. And as well they should be. Next question. How can this happen? Doesn't the government check these people out first? Not nearly as much as they should. That's the best answer I can give you. Obviously, it's obvious that they should do more checking on this. Okay, Klamath River Media says, Preston Stewart and you have been so helpful in my understanding on the Ukraine war. Would you ever do a video with him soon on Ukraine? Yeah, I should. I've had him on the show before, and I've been on his show, and I should have him on again sometime. That would be a great thing to do. Next question. I saw that Russia's been sending in soldiers on horseback to the front line. Now, why are they reverting to this? Because all of their vehicles get blown up, and horses are cheaper. They're running out of vehicles to get soldiers to the front lines. What's amazing is that the drone operators on the Ukrainian side, Ukrainians love animals, and they would hate to blow up a horse, but they've gotten really good at buzzing the riders of the horse to the point where he falls off the horse and then blowing the guy up, and so the horse doesn't get hurt. I've seen some videos on that. Really amazing piloting skills. As somebody who's been flying drones for years, my hat's off to those people. Okay, next question. 2 questions. Can you speak about the implications of the current uprisings? This is from Grant Barker. Uprisings in Iran, and will radical Islam be satisfied with most of the snack bars instead of all of snack bars? Yeah, that's cute. That's nice dad joke there. I have seen that there have been more and more uprisings inside Iran. A lot of that is just due to economic factors. The fact that the economy in Iran is so bad. When I go to Armenia, I meet a lot of people from Iran who have fled to Armenia, and they'll tell you just how incredibly bad it is there. It's insane. So yeah, well, let's hope that continues and that enough pressure gets put on Iran that they won't be able to threaten the rest of the world. But Iran is still doubling down on its proxies, trying to threaten Israel. Instead of putting their money into fixing the infrastructure in their own country, they're putting it into trying to rebuild their stock of missiles. So there's that. Next question. What can the good people in Minnesota and the rest of us do to put pressure on the government to make sure the fraud is prosecuted and not swept under the rug? Well, you need to be contacting your Congress critter and telling them in no uncertain terms that they need to be doing something about investigating this and putting a stop to the fraud nationwide, not just in Minnesota. All of us should be contacting our Congress people to do that. Next question. Make daycares for terrorism money. What's our government doing? Yeah, well, that's not really a question. Next question. Does anyone think anything will actually come of this? It will be brushed under a rug when something else comes up and no one is held responsible. Well, I've seen that they have ongoing cases against more than 350 people at this point. Let's hope that the pressure we put on the government will lead to thousands or tens of thousands of people being prosecuted and deported for this. And I want to know how much of this money from these daycare centers was donated to Ilhan Omar, because it would be great to see her, recalled and deported as well. Next question. Now that this is found out, what's next for these people responsible? The government tends to brush under okay, we're getting a lot of those kind of questions. Why pay taxes? Well, because you don't want to go to jail. The government uses coercion to take your money and to use it to buy votes for themselves. And that's just the way it works, unfortunately. But I'll tell you, was the reason. I had that same question myself. What's the point of even paying taxes when it's so much of it is getting not just wasted, but used against us? And that was one big reason why I chose to move my tax abode to Panama. I still have a home in the United States, but I don't own it anymore. It's now in the company. And I had to do some serious sacrifices, sacrificing living in the United States to take a principled stand against the taxes that I had to pay. And I'm doing it all legally by the book and doing it. And I still pay a god awful amount of taxes here in the United States, but I pay a lot less than I would be paying if I was still living in the United States. So moving out of the US was one way that I stuck it to the man, I guess. Next question. I'm trying to buy a hard copy of Death of Civilization in Australia. Amazon won't deliver to Australia. Amazon Australia won't sell it. Is there another way to get it on paper copy? I'm so glad you asked, because we are going. I'm only here in West Virginia for a few more days, and so we are doing a special deal on locals. Okay, so if you go to chuckholton.com, that'll take you to my locals page. Locals is like Patreon, where you can support independent creators, and we get a good portion of our support from locals now, and that helps because I keep getting demonetized on YouTube, for us to be able to keep paying our employees and things like that. We have big plans for 2026. We're going to be stepping it up a notch on the channel, bringing you a lot more good content, but we're also going to be doing a lot of stuff for our supporters over on locals. There's a special on right now for the next couple of days. It's normally $9 a month to become a supporter. You can now become a supporter for $5 a month, get all the benefits of being a supporter over there. And if you sign up in the next 2 days, in the next 48 hours, as an annual supporter, it's with that $5 and 60 something dollars with tax for the year, I will send you a free signed copy of one of my books, whichever one you like, as long as I still have stock here at the house. I've got a couple cases of all of my books except Bulletproof. Bulletproof, I think I only have like 5 copies left, but I have Death of Civilization here. If you want to sign up as an annual supporter, not a monthly supporter, an annual supporter on locals, I will send you a free signed copy, hard copy of one of my books. And if you're in Australia, we'll work that out. We may need to charge a little bit extra for shipping to get it all the way over there. But so that, and you know, I got a bunch of my books right here. So you can kind of take your pick, and you'll get contacted by Amy. Here's Bulletproof. That's the one I only have 5 copies, maybe 6 copies of. Morley Soldier is my book about being a ranger, and Death of Civilization is my most recent book. And then Prowess is the one before that. Making Men is one of my most popular books. It's a curriculum on manhood for your sons, and so on and so forth. I've got a bunch of novels and everything else. So again, if you want to get a free signed copy, just go become an annual supporter over at chuckholton.com. You have to use the code Christmas 2025 and you'll get that discount. So you not only get a discount on the annual membership, but you get a free signed copy of my book. So thank you for asking that and reminding me to talk about that. Next question. The United States ever go back to the biblical principle of he who will not work shall not eat? I doubt it, because it's too profitable for the politicians to keep paying people with our tax dollars. Next question. Is Omar out? No, Omar's not out. Not yet. But from your mouth to God's ear, as they say. Next question. Why are we paying taxes? If people quit paying, that will solve the problem, and real fast. Well, if everybody quit paying, they probably couldn't arrest us all. But I'm just certainly not going to advocate for that on this platform and get myself arrested first. Next question. Wasn't there a retired rich football player that stole from welfare and got away with it? I'm not familiar with that case. I don't know. Next question. What will be the next course of action as a result of President Trump's meeting with President Zelensky? I'm telling you, folks, nothing's going to come of that. Russia does not want peace. President Trump is not acting as a mediator. He's acting as an envoy for Russia to pressure Ukraine to capitulate, and Ukraine is not going to capitulate. So nothing's going to come of that. That's my personal opinion. Next question. Thank you, PC. Appreciate that. £9.99 sterling, and also the $2 from Artie. Thank you again. Next question. Where was the state and federal agency oversight? Yeah, well, there is a fraud unit. They just weren't doing their jobs, apparently. Maybe some of those people ought to go to jail too. Why is Tucker blaming Israel for everything now? Because he's being paid by the UAE. I'm sorry, he's being paid by Qatar, and Qatar doesn't like Israel. That's why. Next question. Convention of States? That's not really a question. It's just a phrase. I don't know what. Are you saying, should we have one? Good luck with that. I don't think it's likely we're going to have a convention of states. Next question. I've talked to so many people who are clueless about this topic. How is this not covered at all by mainstream news? At least someone on mainstream. Yeah, they are starting to cover it because they're getting pressured to do so by their viewers. And maybe part of the reason why it's not so big in mainstream news is because, like I said, this has been going on for a long time, and the mainstream news probably reported on it back in 2018 when I did. Okay, so that could be it. Next question. Is China doing live fire around Taiwan today? I've heard they are, but I don't know. I haven't followed that too closely. Next question. Does the Doge department still exist, and can they tackle this? They do not exist. They have been closed down. Why? I don't know. Probably because they were being too effective. Bottom line is, President Trump is probably the best person we could have in office to actually get something done about this here in the United States. So let's hope that President Trump actually makes this a priority. I would say a bigger priority than any other priority right now. This is a massive, massive fraud case that, again, could easily top $1 trillion a year. I mean, it's massive, just huge. So I don't know. We'll have to wait and see. I think they ought to maybe do a concentrated sweep of Minneapolis with ICE agents, and they do have some up there. And of course, you have all these idiotic leftist Karens who are out there screaming at the ICE agents, and they should be screaming at the Somalis. So go figure. All right. Thank you very much for watching. That is all I've got time for today, but I appreciate all of you. And I hope that you will go to chuckholton.com and become a supporter over there. And make sure you like this video and subscribe to the podcast. And thank you, Valkyrie, for that $20. Appreciate you very much as well. God bless you all. We will see you next time.